So today we have Annie. My cousin introduced us. Her name is Yasmin, also known as the Climb to Healthy. So she introduced both of us via Instagram, and it was actually a really great introduction because I've had a great time talking to you already, and I'm going to have a great time talking to you today. So how are you doing today?
I'm doing all right. I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm good. Whenever you're ready, the floor's over to you.
Okay, so a bit about me. Um, I was diagnosed with SLE lupus when I was 12 years old, and then later, when 15 or 16, diagnosed with fibromyalgia. And somewhere along the line, I forget what date exactly, I also picked up hypermobility spectrum disorder. So I've got a nice little collection, just a small one, nice little collection of autoimmune diseases and chronic pain and fatigue diseases that have essentially led me to be a fairly young disabled person. I started out when I was like really young, talking 6, 7, maybe even 8, being like a fairly active kid. I liked climbing trees. I liked playing outside and going in the fields. I wasn't these. I mean, I wasn't the generation for it, but I wasn't a gamer kid on the PlayStation or anything like that. I liked being outside all the time. My mum used to take me hiking. We used to go to YHA youth hostels and stuff like that. I wasn't not okay with the outdoors. I was, quite confident in the outdoors, even learning to read maps, stuff like that. But progressively, as my health got worse and the options for treatment weren't as good at that point, I just slowly had to drop out of things and stop doing things. And I didn't want to go out and play as much when I was younger. He was finding me, 10, 11 years old, struggling to get out of bed past 1 o'clock. And at the time, I didn't know that was abnormal. My friends would knock on the door and say, "Oh, is Annie coming out to play?" And it would be like, "Oh no, she's still in bed." They'd come about an hour or two later, I'd still be in bed. They'd keep knocking on the door until eventually I emerged. And it just got worse. I started having to drop out of school and be homeschooled. All sorts of things just sort of slowly meant I was less and less outside and more, just in the house or in the hospital or nowhere in particular fun. And I think that's where I really started to become introverted and almost afraid of going outside, on the basis that if I did, it would make my pain worse, it would make me more tired. Occasionally I braved things like college when I was 17. I had to drop out of that because, again, going to the college campus, going up the stairs, doing all of that and not having any kind of institutional support for that meant I just felt worse, and it put me off again. It was just one thing after another of me being put off going outside, doing things, living my life, being confident outside. And I went from this like outgoing, enjoyed education, liked to be outside and do things, get my hands dirty, to a very scared inside person with plenty of mental health issues that come with that, and not in a good place. I think a lot of people, now that I've started to be vocal now about my disability, see me as maybe a bit confident about my person, myself, and my health. Maybe think that I'm in a good place, I'm cheerful and happy, and they'd be right, I am now. But prior to this sort of stage of my life haunts me from, it will forever. The point of getting here was hitting rock bottom. And by rock bottom, I mean I wasn't eating food because I couldn't keep any down. I was on these Complan drinks and 40-sip drinks to try and just give me nutrients at such a young age. And I didn't want to take my medication anymore because it used to make me feel sick and throw up. I was on low dose chemotherapy, and that just, it did great for my lupus. It suppressed my immune system. It made my symptoms really great. My pain wasn't that bad, but I was also sick all the time, or nauseous all the time. Steroids, I used to have intravenous steroids. Again, you had a period where it was really good, but just after I'd had the intravenous steroids, I was bedridden, with a bucket next to the side of my bed. I'd have to stay at my grandma's when my mum was at work. And then I'd have like 4 weeks of good period and then a crash afterwards. And it was a progressive basis of me learning that everything has a punch, everything has a kick, everything hurts, everything doesn't go right. Anything I do or try to progress on just doesn't work and isn't working. And I felt let down by health professionals. I felt let down by the education system. I felt let down by everything outside in a world that wasn't built to protect me. The idea of being young with lupus was it wasn't abnormal, it was just not very, it's rare to have lupus. It's even rarer to have lupus at a young age. And there's no sort of support there for growing up with a health condition, for growing up in pain, wondering why you're sleepy. How do you get through education? How do you get a job? How do you establish a career? How do you do all of that? There's no support for that. Any sport groups you went to were all with 40, 50-year-old women who'd already had their kids, already had their career. And it's horrible that they had to suddenly lose that, but, you know, they'd already built the foundation. So you go into a dark place where you feel alone, you feel like nobody understands, you feel like you're one of a kind, and there was some usage of, sorry, my dog's just, yeah. I got very depressed. I was in the healthcare system way before I was even diagnosed with lupus. From 10, I was in the mental health system. I was originally actually diagnosed with depression, which is a symptom of lupus and fibromyalgia. And everybody just thought that everything that was wrong with me was because of that at that point. It wasn't, I didn't leave until I was 18, 19, this progressive health, mental health system. And again, felt let down by that because they're not prepared for people who are chronically ill and young. When you go to CAMS, they're strained enough as it is. So when you go to this counsellor and they say, okay, tell me about your problems, and you say, okay, so I'm really sick, my medication makes me throw up, I hurt everywhere, I can't remember what I did the next day, and that's frustrating to people. And they're like, yeah, no, that's really hard. And there's not really anything they feel they can say back to that. And you're just like, yeah, I know, tell me about it. This whole period of my childhood was a recovery in a sense, because I was learning my way around things, but it did lead to a point where curtains were closed permanently. I was unwashed for weeks. I was so thin and frail, and I'd lost so much muscle that even if I wanted to do anything, it hurt so much, and there was nothing there to teach you that how to get stronger in a chronically ill way, in a way that supports fatigue and doesn't trigger a flare up and do all of these things. You're all on your own on this basis. And I think I've rambled on about that so much, but I cannot emphasize how dark a place that is, and how that leads to so much abuse to your own body, because you've got no other option than to just, be in a horrible, horrible place. So part of my recovery was mental health recovery. I think that was like my first step into getting back up. I'd lost my granddad. He'd passed away from Alzheimer's and other things, and he was adventurous. I've got a newspaper article of him because he crossed the Sahara Desert on his own in a Fiat from Nigeria to get back home here because the country was having some issues at the time. And that's like, you know, he was a very adventurous person. He built his own boat out of office furniture and went floating about in the Nigerian rivers and stuff like that. He was a bit mad, to be honest. But he lived his life to the fullest every time. If he wanted something, he'd go out and do it within reason. Never wanted to hurt a person, never wanted to take things from anybody else. He just wanted excitement and the best for his family. And when he passed, I kind of just felt like I wanted to be like that. I was sick of being like, he would be ashamed if he knew me at that point and knew that I was unemployed. I was ill and in pain all the time. I was depressed. I was doing things that I shouldn't be doing, that aren't good for my health. He wouldn't be happy with that person, and I wasn't happy with that person. I didn't want to be like that anymore. I wanted to be stronger. So I went to a therapist, a private one I knew, who did understand me, who helped me actually get discharged from the child mental health services. And it took a little bit. It took money. I think that's the key to my recovery at this point, that there was a hell of a lot of privilege in the fact that I could afford to get back off. And that kick-started everything for me. When I sort of had this realisation that I can say no to obligations I don't feel I can handle. I can be myself, and if other people don't like that, that's okay. I know that sounds like basic stuff, but when you're in a hole, that's a hard thing to get your head round. And you know, doing things that therapists do, she worked her magic in a very good way, and it did make the change for me. After that, I started wanting to become stronger, so I was just using an app at home, doing body weight exercises, and it wasn't always great. I did have to sort of learn that I can't do it 5 days a week, and you know, it was a lot of touch and go, but then the strength started to come. And I just kept pushing barriers, like going away on a holiday to Barcelona with friends, which ordinarily would be a horrifying situation for me because I would feel like I'd have to keep up with these able-bodied, non-disabled, non-chronically ill people, and then potentially also explain, hi, no, I actually hurt, so I can't do that. It was a city break. It wasn't, you know, some kind of lounging around resort thing, so it was going to be packed filled with everything. And that was sort of the start of me implementing mental health things, of setting my boundaries. When I did hurt, when my ankle swelled up so much and the inflammation kicked off badly, I said, right, I'm just going to stay home. I don't feel very well. I'm going to stay back at the apartment that we rented. When we were out walking around the place and I was starting to get tired, I was like, okay, I'm going to go find one of those street cafes, sit down and have a cup of tea or something. Setting those boundaries meant I could enjoy the entire thing happily, have my own and fantastic experience of the time, and not push myself. And that was revolutionary to me. Like, I don't have to keep up with other people. I can say, no, I hurt, and then leave it there. And they might feel a bit awkward about it at the beginning. They might be unsure of what it is or why it is to begin with. But does that really matter? Does it really matter if somebody feels a little bit awkward for 5 seconds or 10 because you're feeling a little unwell and you just want to go off and have your own space? It really doesn't make a difference. And it grew from there. It wasn't plain sailing. There were flare-ups with fibro. There were crying in my GP's office begging for some kind of pain relief. There was still depression. There was still the struggle that I still had chronic health issues. Yeah, okay, I dealt with my mental health, but the pain is still there. The problem is still there. The reality is most of the places I went to, rheumatology departments, they were a bit gaslighty, is the only way I can put it. There was a lot of, you know you have to deal with some level of pain, which at that point you feel like throwing your shoe down and saying, do you understand that I'm already dealing with a certain level of pain? Especially as at one point I was overweight. The consideration was you'd feel a lot less pain if you were thinner, which my argument was I was underweight and I was in a lot of pain. I was healthy weight and I was in a lot of pain. It's never changed in my transition of weight. It makes no blooming difference to me at that point. So I asked to go to, I was fortunate enough to say, kick off a stink and say, look, I think I'm having a lupus flare up. I'm not currently attached to any rheumatology department. I want to be transferred to London clinic, which, because I live in Derby, is 2 hours away on the train. The London clinic is one of these specialised lupus clinics. It is the best in the country. It has the best doctor in the country. I had no other option. I'd done Birmingham, I'd done Nottingham, I'd done somewhere else, but I can't remember. And all of them were the basis of just giving me the bare minimum of medication because I couldn't tolerate some of the higher stuff because it made me sick. And it was just a case of, well, we have people in here that are much worse than you. But when I went to London, it was revolutionary. And again, it's that privilege. I could pay for the train ticket, which is expensive. Like on a disabled rail card, I think it was like £97 return. That's a lot of money to fork out. That is a lot of money. Like I think on PIP benefits, I get about 300 quid a month. That's like a third of my money. If you're unemployed and that's what you're relying on, that is a lot of money to fork out for a hospital appointment. You don't get reimbursement for that. But it was worth it because she understood where I was coming from emotionally, why I needed that support, why I needed that reaffirming sort of help. And she offered me these medications I'd never tried before, I'd never heard of before, but it turns out they're quite normal medications to be given to people who have fibromyalgia or lupus. So it was really bizarre that I'd never been offered it, and goes back to that sort of medical gaslighting of not believing you, thinking you're being over the top, not thinking it's serious enough. And she put me on these things for my fibromyalgia. I'd been able to sleep and be touched and hugged previously. Like the idea of just like when I would be with my partner, he would put his hand on my side or something for a hug, and I would itch, it would burn, it would hurt, it would be horrible. And I just thought I wasn't a cuddly person. I just thought I felt uncomfortable all the time, and it was gross, and I hated it because it's just so uncomfortable. How can anybody like this? It turns out I am quite a cuddly person. I do like it's amazing what pain you can tolerate and you think is just ordinary. And when that's removed, it's amazing the type of person you can become, and the person that's been hidden underneath you all of this time. And as these things got lifted, with paying for mental health therapy, with paying for going to London and stuff like that, a privilege, literally. It lifted those barriers so that I could start being more outgoing, more excited, more outdoorsy. I stopped thinking that my only way to live was inside. I think I'd had like a really bad week with pain, and my mentality just went, well, screw it. I am always in pain, no matter how little I move or how good and perfect I am with my energy basis. So sod it. I'm going off for a walk. I'm going to go climb a hill. I'm going to go and do heavy duty things that will make me hurt because I hurt anyway. And it was great fun. I had a great time. I went for a hike. I had smiled for the first time, like genuinely big smile in a photo that was taken at the top of this tiny hill in relative to what I do now. But the most genuine smile I've ever seen. Like to this day, that picture makes me so happy because I feel the joy I had. I felt like I was on top of the world. And I'd say that was my recovery. Like this realization after all of these heavy things had been lifted off me, that I'm not the person I thought I was. I'm not this introverted, depressed, cynical, lazy person. It just ignited this newfound interest in adventure, again, like my granddad, which, you know, I live for. Going out and just finding new places to climb, new places to hike. I love hiking. Going wild swimming. I went wild swimming because I had a lupus flare up. It wasn't really an interest before. I thought it was a bit weird. And didn't like the idea of swimming in lakes that I couldn't see the bottom of and stuff like that. Had a lupus flare up. Then that knocked me for 6. That was a really bad flare up that I've literally only just sort of come out of a few months ago. I couldn't hike because of it. I was in so much pain, so I couldn't do anything. So I went for a swim. It was the only other thing I could do at this spot in Dorset. I couldn't do the hike that I planned to do, so I just went for the swim, and that ignited another thing. You know, that just sort of ability to go and do things, and it doesn't have to be exertion, and finding ways to be outdoors, to be in nature, to do things I love. It doesn't even have to be outdoors, but to do things I love in a way that's suiting to my health, my lifestyle, my adaptations. That's why I like climbing. You can go up for one climb and then sit. It's a very social thing as well. You can just sit and watch other people climb, you know, spray a load of beta out and like annoy everybody and offer the talk bag occasionally. It's great. Like, you can rest for ages. It's so adaptable. Hiking, I mean, when you get past the idea that you have to consistently walk at like 2.5 kilometers an hour up a hill, and the fact that you can just sit every 10 minutes, you know, that's a great thing. When you can do it in a way that suits you, that suits your body and that suits your disability, and you create these boundaries. That's my recovery. My recovery is knowing that I do have a limit and sticking to it and working with it, not against it, not feeling like it's against me. Yeah. And yeah, that's it really.
So you do a lot of outdoors now, don't you? I say a lot of outdoors because that's the term I'm going to say. You do a lot of outdoors. It's a lot of things.
Yeah, I do a lot of outdoors. Yes, I do a lot of outdoors nowadays. I do. Yeah, not as much as I'd like over the summer, but I don't deal with hot weather very well. So, but yeah, sort of my weekend activity, I have to be walked. I get itchy when I don't get to go outside. Like, I'm very reliant on other people being able to take me to places. I live in a city. The public transport to our Peak District National Park isn't great here. It actually is non-existent. So I'm very reliant on my husband being here to be able to drive me to outdoor places. He goes to football matches, he has shifts, so I have to sort of work around these things, and I don't like having to be dependent on that, but it works. I could never drive to the Peak District for like a hike or a climb and then drive back. Even if I could drive, I can't. But there was no way I'd have the energy to do that extra thing. So having that dependency is annoying. But it's like a thing I have to fit in every week. I've got my schedule out. Like, when's your next football match? When are you doing overtime? You know, no, you can't go to that match. I need to be walked. like a puppy almost, like demanding. I need to go outside, holding my lead at the door. Like, please take me somewhere.
Yeah,
I love the outdoors. I love it.
Yeah, no. And what I really liked as well is actually, it's one of those kind of, not one door closes, another door opens, but when you were saying, you know, you couldn't obviously hike for a time and you didn't like to swim before, you didn't want to swim, but because you couldn't do something that you enjoy doing and you like doing, you thought, actually, I'm going to try something new. It's almost like, not that you were forced, but you actually came out of your comfort zone, and which is a huge thing to do, to step out of your comfort zone and think, you know what, I can't do this, what I love to do at the moment. So what am I going to do? Am I going to sit here and wait and, maybe be upset or something? Or am I going to just try something new? And you tried something new.
Absolutely. I think that's like my biggest amazement when I look back, because breaking my comfort zone was a no-no. Like, I used to get afraid when I was, before we'd go for family meals, even to like Pizza Hut, I couldn't. I was afraid. I'd cancel every time. I'd cancel on dates every time, last minute, because I just was so afraid that I didn't feel well already. So I was going to feel worse when I was there, and then I was going to feel even worse when I get back, That fear of pain is scary. It's like nobody does things knowing they're going to get hurt, knowing they're going to hurt comfortably. It's literally against human instinct. So pushing boundaries for me was like a massive hurdle, and it's just like my favorite thing about me right now. Like, it's such a brag, but it's like a favorite thing for me to be able to say, like, I try new things because it's so cool. And it is great, I think, that circumstances like climbing came about because of mental health, because of physical health as well. I did it because Yaz, your cousin, said that it really kept her EDS in check for a while, and I was thinking, okay, her muscles became stronger in places that you wouldn't normally use and kept joints in, and I subluck sometimes, I injure myself a lot. I could really do with that strength. That's how I started climbing, and I love it. It's not even for that anymore. So everything I think I do has really linked into my health, which is kind of a beautiful thing, when that was the thing that limited me before.
Yeah. It's just to bring her up again. It's funny because she got both of us introduced into climbing, and we both fell in love with climbing. So
she's a bit of a pusher, that one. She's the climbing pusher. It's highly addictive, and I blame her entirely for the increase in like having to buy shoes and paying to go to the bouldering walls and stuff like that. It's all her fault. But
yeah, it's not the cheapest of sports. It's not.
None of them are. I think actually swimming is probably the cheapest, because all you have to do is buy like an Asda swimming costume. that's the easiest one you can get. No, I bought a dry robe. You just get sucked in with things. It's just all expensive.
You do. You get sucked in, and then you get like emails from like North Face, or you see there's a deal, and you're like, oh, what can I buy that I don't need? But what can I buy? Oh, I'm going to get this 50% off fleece because I might need it next winter in the wool. I might.
I'm desperate to get like a multitude of Patagonia fleeces just because I want Patagonia fleeces. I don't need any more fleeces. Like 90% of my things is jumpers and fleeces. But I need them. No.
No, I a trick I found was, I noticed sometimes I could fit into boys extra large, but like they're fleeces, like they're like jackets and things like that, and it was like the best hack that I discovered for myself that I could get into, because obviously, I'm just gonna say it, the prices are and I was getting a couple of boys extra large clothes in, and it was all my outdoor stuff, and it was great.
I think that's the other thing about outdoor. I think it's so weird that I associate like outdoor clothes with confidence. Like when I put on outdoor clothing, I'm like, yeah, I'm good, I'm the best, kind of thing. I'm ready for the world. And it's not the same when I put my skinny jeans on and like my work top. It's just, you don't get that vibe. You just like, it just gives you so much more confidence when I put those kind of things on. Like my hiking boots, it's like, yes, I'm an adventurer. But they are expensive. And again, well, that's, I'd say I don't say it enough, but I think a lot of people think you can go through recovery and all of these things and getting outdoors through grit and sheer determination and willpower. And it's not, it's money, because there's just not the infrastructure or care there for most people to get there through the public health services, through the things that are available for free, not quickly, and not, that would take sheer grit and determination. It's quite a privilege, I think.
No, I know it is, and some of those sports definitely. But then there are some of the sports like hiking. Obviously, yes, a pair of hiking boots the good ones aren't always the cheapest, but, even just having something like that and being able to walk in the outdoors, there is something about the outdoors that, because I'm in love with the outdoors, and there is something about the outdoors that is just so therapeutic beyond belief.
Absolutely. I think I remember going to Kinder Scout and me and my friend were wearing like hiking boots and gear and slipping around in this sludge. And people were very comfortably walking around in their like white trainers. And were coming back down from Kinder Scout, and I was like, okay, you do you. You've done your hike in your night trainers, and good for you. If you can do it, and I don't think anybody should be limited by gear, but it is expensive. Especially when you have things that you need for things like hiking poles, bit more expensive than you'd think, and things like people like Yaz and probably myself at this point need it for that proprioception, stop ourselves from falling and breaking our ankle, essentially. Not breaking, but hurting our ankles, because it happens more often to us than it would others. There's little costs in it that come when you're disabled. I mean, they say that disability increases your wage or your cost of living by so much percentage. I don't remember the exact numbers. And that's definitely true when you think about adaptive sports and in the outdoors. I think it does come with an increased cost that I don't think everybody always appreciates.
Yeah, no, but it's definitely, I think, finding the right hobby or the right sport. And you know what, even if it's not sport, the right music or the right, art, anything, the right anything. And like you said, it was not, you didn't say trial and error, but it was figuring out, I think when you said you went to the gym, and it was figuring out how many days a week you could do something. And it is just figuring out different things that make you happy or make you feel okay or just make you feel
absolutely
good.
I think movement is a big part of it. So you could have your YouTube, do some yoga, it's all free. Pilates, oh goodness, I tried the Pilates on YouTube and it's a workout and a half, so that's definitely goals I think for people. And some people really love that. Reading is a massive thing for me, and you can pick up charity shop books for £1, which are great. Most of my books are charity shop books. There's things that aren't outdoor related that you can find that when you make it your own way and you do it your own way and you found sort of yourself in that, it's great. It's a great little pocket of happiness that you can just rely on to remind you that you are capable and you're not this lump of injury or pain or illness. You are capable. It's nice.
Yeah. And it's again, like you said before, once you kind of got through the barriers, or it's, whether it's a physical or it's mental or emotional, whatever your barrier is, it's once you realize, kind of on the point you just said, once you do realize that it's not just defining you completely, and that, once you start to break through them, and whether it's therapy or however you do start to deal with it or kind of get through it, this new different person that was always deep down inside can come out.
Yeah. I mean, if you ask anybody what I was like college times, I was a very grumpy person. I was very antisocial. I would be the person sat on the side giving evils to the other members of my classmates, wondering why they hated me. And feeling completely aggrieved by the entire thing. And that's not what I'm like now. I'm meeting new people, I'm speaking to new people. It's amazing, this little person that's inside of you that you can just, if you can just open it up a bit, you can become this whole person that's positive, outgoing, or just whatever makes your life you, what makes you happy with you. I couldn't tell you 5 years ago that I was happy with me, maybe even 4 years ago that I was happy with me. I did not like me at all. Was not the person I wanted to be. I didn't even really fully see a light out of it. Now I like me. I love my life. I love the way I am now. And if I just stayed like this forever, that would be great. Even if I had a flare up and went back down, which happens, I know this is capable. I know this is me. I can get there. It's I've done it once before. I can come back to this place now. I think I had this appointment, my last appointment in London. And this is another reason, honestly, the mental support you get from this clinic is game changer. And she'd said to me, I'd hit baseline as far as she's concerned, not remission, but the idea that this is as good as it's going to get for me. It sounds so depressing, but when you hit that point, it's actually quite nice because you've done everything, you've grown as much as you can, your medication is not going to change, and if you're happy with that baseline, which I was at the time, is great. So she was like, yeah, you're on annual review, which is a goal, like it's an achievement unlock type thing. So she said that flare-ups will happen. Like, this state isn't permanent. The thing you need to remember is that you got yourself here. You got yourself to this point. You can do it again, and it's gonna be rubbish if you have to do it, but you can do it. You've got yourself here, and that is like the key. If you ever relapse or anything like that, I know that I can get myself back here, probably.
Yeah, and that's huge strength to be able to know that you can. But I think that's with anyone, that every day they're doing tiny little things or gestures that sometimes they don't even realize they're doing. And they are, getting up every day and continuing on with something is still strength that you're still going.
Exactly. I don't think I was weak before when I wasn't well, and when I was giving in essentially to the idea that I was just never going to have a good life, never going to have a job or anything like that, and this mentality. I wasn't weak then, I was incredibly strong because I endured. I did endure it and then eventually pull myself out of it. And even if I didn't, I was still a strong person then. I do kind of hate the mentality that we have to be strong, because I really don't want to be. Do you know what I mean? It's not a quality that I particularly want in myself, because I'd quite like things to just be. I don't want to have to endure, but people do, and that's especially with mental health. And I don't really touch on this enough. My physical health is hard. I feel it's predominantly monitored. Once you got the good combo of healthcare, the key was unlocked, and that with a good doctor is quite quick, in relative terms. Mental health, that sort of side of overcoming that, coming back from that is probably one of the hardest things I've ever had to do, and something I'm always, to be honest, still afraid that I will go back into. Like, if I'm not afraid that I'm going to have another flare-up, because it's probably going to happen. I'm afraid that I'll become that really sad, scared person again. Like, that is the thing I'm afraid of, and that is to have to go through that kind of thing. Lots of people do it so much worse and are still doing it and still working and doing more than that. That is strength. That is immense, the ability to just open your eyes in the day and go, okay, and then carry on. Like, that is just cool. I think that some people do that, and I don't think people realize when we're talking about physical things, when people have injuries, from what I've spoken to, when people have injuries, when people have disabilities and chronic illnesses, the mental health is always the hardest and most enduring thing to get back from, to get to that high point of. You read articles and things about people overcoming their disabilities or their injuries, their spinal cord injuries and stuff like that, and they climbed a mountain. And that's amazing that they did. But sometimes those don't touch on the reality that person, that mental space to get there, that is the biggest uphill challenge. That's the biggest thing to deal with. I don't think people appreciate the mental health side of things enough in disability and chronic illness and injury.
And that, with what you just touched on, is what you're here today and what I'm here today and what this is for. It is to touch on the mental health side of things, and with regards to recovery, because you're right, people don't. It's a taboo subject. People don't want to talk about it. They don't like to talk about it. everyone has a story, everyone in their own way. I'm not saying everyone's got some XYZ, but everyone has their own story in their own way. And yeah, people don't like to kind of say, yes, I've had an injury, and people say, oh, how was your recovery? Yeah, it was good, etc., etc. Oh, are you back to the gym, or are you back to? And they always talk about the physical side, but you never hear someone go, how many times did, not that they're gonna say this, but it's they don't say like, how did you feel in yourself? Were there times when you did feel alone, and how often were you crying? And I know they're not questions that you wouldn't phrase exactly like that, but they're kind of the sort of things that people don't ask. They don't ask you about necessarily what was going on inside your head and your emotions and your mental health. They ask you a lot of the time about, are you running again? Or are you, jumping again?
Yeah, I think a lot of recovery can be measured by that. I deal with stroke survivors, and some of the biggest issues that they'll have physical changes to the way that they are, cognitive issues, but mental health is such a massive part in even their recovery, because your whole life's been flipped upside down in one way or another. You don't, when you have an injury like yourself, you say, or when you get diagnosed with a health condition or anything like that, they don't give you like a therapist. They don't say, right, okay, and this may impact your mental health in this way, or this way. There's no real acknowledgement of how much that can impact. It's just like kind of this unspoken truth that people who have gone through that phase of not being able to walk, who have gone through that phase of not being able to stay awake for more than a few hours a day, that have gone through all of those phases in their life for whatever the cause is, there's just like this unspoken thing that we know. We probably hate, like that impact was horrible, but it's not discussed outside of that little community bubble, and I'm really glad that you are, to be honest.
Oh, thank you. But yeah, it's one of those things where not to say it exactly like this, but it's like you don't get it until you kind of go through it in a way. But that's the thing, like, this is, what this is. It's any sort of journey, any sort of recovery, any sort of story, and everyone, even in a completely different ways, can relate even to the smallest of details. There are times when during my recovery I'd feel very alone, and it's just, until you spoke to people that'd been through it as well, they also, to hear other people felt so alone as well, which just kind of made you think, wow, where was everyone? What, you feel so alone, but then so did everyone else that's gone through something feel so alone.
It's such an unfortunate thing that people find that community after they've got that.
Yeah. I found it after, when I started to do all of this. I started to find it after, when I started to feel less alone. I started to find it.
It's just such a bizarre way. I don't think anybody can understand sort of how alone you feel at that point, because everybody thinks, okay, yeah, you feel alone, maybe they're going on themselves and stuff like that, and I think they look at you with pity but don't fully understand like why you feel alone in that way, and why it is so hard when people say, oh, I hope you get well soon and things like that, and you're thinking it's not going to be soon. Finding the community online, like finding people like us, finding people like loads of people online, especially that are in like the little niche of the outdoor active community, even not even outdoor, just base. I found gym goers with MS, and it's just like, yes, you do you. Finding that kind of community is really so like I think that is a big part of recovery as well. I'd say I definitely came out of my shell a lot more and found acceptance in myself a lot more because of that. I don't know about you, but I had like this kind of taboo feeling about saying I'm disabled, I am unable. I would mask it. I would not like to use my blue badge at all ever. I would really find it like an uncomfortable label on me, and I would not really like myself because of this aspect. I'd think I was less than, or a burden, or all of the typical internalized ableism that people carry. Finding that community like threw a blooming wrecking ball at that kind of wall, and it was like, you are cool, you are amazing. There's like this whole thing where it seems chronic ill people who are younger sort of call non-chronically ill people muggles, and I live for it. It's a thing. I didn't know it was a thing. Multiple people do it, and it's so cool. Yaz did it the other day. She was like, I've got a muggle illness. She wasn't feeling very well. I was like, it's such a cool...
I did see that. I saw that she wrote a muggle illness.
It was, yeah, it's like a thing that people do, and it's just such a cool community that you can find. Everybody's gone through that phases that you've gone through in your life alone, and it does add to that little bit of recovery of keeping you there and keeping you feeling on top of yourself.
Yeah.
Sorry, my dog's being really neat.
It's fine. That's just what happens when you do things like this over cameras and things. There's animals everywhere. Yeah. But what I was going to say was just touching on that alone feeling. It is, no one knows, I guess, why. But I was thinking about it just now. Is it, this is what I'm thinking. One of the reasons is because whatever happens, to you or as a person, because it's suddenly so different, and it can be so isolating, and it can be, you can have all your independence taken away from you. You can be someone before and then one day wake up in something completely different. And I think that also can just impact on why you can feel so alone, because you thought you had everything going one way, and then it's just...
I don't know what that feels like, because I've always been chronically ill for as long as I can remember. Yeah. But I've always said, and people always look at me a bit funny when I say this, because I say I've got it from you, and it's like, oh my God, that must have been so hard. And I'm like, yeah, it is, but, I've met people like yourself that have had it, and you've got your whole life planned, you're really on the ball, everything's there, and then suddenly something changes, and it's just, you've got to learn an entire new thing. And that, to me, I couldn't imagine that. Like, that is... that is just heartbreaking to have that kind of rip away effect. And no.
Just for anyone that doesn't see the video, the dog appeared on that.
He's just being a bit needy. He's not even normally like this. He ignores me for most of the day, and then now he's suddenly like, yeah. Anyway, I genuinely, I really do empathise with how hard that must have been. I can only imagine sort of on a basis of when I get a flare up and it kicks me to the curb. Like, one day I'm not great, but I'm doing all right, and the next day I'm sleeping for like 72 hours, struggling to stay awake to eat food and stuff like that. That's, that's a thing, but you do kind of get used to it because it kind of happens. You don't get used to it, but it's not as scary. I imagine it's going to be so scary for some people, just waking up and suddenly everything's different for you, and having to learn how the world works with it being different. And I think that's what made me feel alone. Nobody explained to me that things would be different for me, and that school would be harder for me, and that I needed these additional supports, and I needed to go ask for them, because nobody was going to give them if you don't. So I felt very alone in that sense, that nobody else seemed to be struggling with the things I struggled as I was growing up. Everybody has their way of feeling alone, but I think it's something that does unite everybody in general anyway, because we've all gone through the feeling of you feel alone and people around you just do not understand. Totally.
Yeah, that's it. It's spot on. You feel alone for a completely different reason, and for whatever it is, it can just make you feel that way, and you can never explain it, but for a different way, it's a different thing for everyone. So if you had any advice to give to somebody going through kind of a similar scenario to you, a similar story and journey, what would you say?
So many things. Hang on a minute. I literally can't even depict that from my head. I think probably, I mean, multiple things. One, don't be afraid of therapy. Like, not enough people appreciate that. Probably most people, in my opinion, will benefit from therapy of some kind. I think the biggest thing is don't be so hard on yourself. And that sounds so easy to say, but like, it was my worst trait to constantly belittle myself and compare myself to able-bodied people and then think, well, I must be rubbish then. And that's not true. When you then compare yourself to other people who are in a similar situation to you, you have this sudden realization, you're doing well, you're doing okay, you're at the same basis of everybody else, you know. You're at the same goal, or that the goal that you want to be at is so achievable. This person's here, and then just don't hate yourself for being disabled or unable at this point in time. Don't put yourself down for it, because it just doesn't help anything at all. It doesn't benefit you in any way. Like, just love yourself a little bit, just a little bit. Just a smidge, even if that's what you can give. Like, just don't be so hard on yourself. I think somebody, I was like going off in this rant whilst I was having a cigarette because I smoked. That's another advice: don't smoke. And I just finished this rant about everything I thought was wrong with me in my life and how I'd failed at everything. And this person turned around and they literally looked at me and went, "You're horrible to yourself." And I was like, that was a shock to me. I thought they were going to like soothe me and stuff like that. But they were like, "No, you're horrible to yourself. For goodness sake, stop it." And I was like, yeah, stop being horrible to yourself, because I guarantee they probably are.
It is. It's a lot of it's positive, good self-talk to yourself, you know. And in any way you want to do it. Some people don't want to look at themselves in the mirror and talk to themselves. Some people don't want to, you know, do it in the shower or the car or anywhere. But sometimes just that tiny inner chatter, just to tell yourself that you love yourself, or that you're okay, or any positive thing, it
Absolutely
helps.
find a friend that you don't mind bigging up that one little thing up to, like saying, "Oh, today I had a shower and put a hair mask on," because, you know, that can be a lot of work for some people, me especially. Find a person that you'll, you know, find pleasantness in. Like a houseplant. Houseplants make me feel so good. When my houseplants are doing well, it's because I've made them do well. That's my achievement.
Yeah.
But in the same breath, when your houseplants don't do well, analyze that. You know, what have you been busy with otherwise? What have you been tackling instead of your houseplants? And, you know, because I think we can put so much focus on things that we really want to achieve, and when we don't then say, okay, I haven't been doing that because I've actually been spending a lot of time focusing on my medical health because I've needed to call GPs, which takes 45 minutes just to get through on the phone, or attend hospital appointments, which can take 3 hours out of your day if you've got to travel to the hospital, park, have the appointment, get back to your car in a massive car park. You know, it takes up time and energy and space, and that's on the basis that, you know, it all goes smoothly. Consider what you're doing, even if it's not fun tasks. Don't make a list of like all the best things you've done today. Make a list of everything you've done that week, right down to, I brush my teeth in the morning and the evening. Like, that's a cool thing to do for some people. And then big yourself up.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's also important to remember that it is okay not to be okay.
Absolutely. Hence the therapy. Like, don't be afraid of therapy, or don't get therapy. You know, you don't have to necessarily. You can just not be okay. Yeah. I really like this mentality of where people are starting to be a bit more honest when people say, "How are you doing? Like, are you okay?" And people are going, "No, not really. You know, my bathtub broke the other day and stuff like that, and it's like, it's okay to complain now. Like, I like that. I like this thing.
It's getting okay to complain. That's where we're going with this today. It is okay to complain.
Complain. It's a good feeling. It's good to get it out, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And you're right. It is one of those things where, and I'm sure you've probably had it because I've had it many times when I've been in a situation where someone has come over to me and they've said, "Are you okay?" Obviously knowing they're not okay. And I've gone, "Yeah, I'm fine." And they've gone again. And I think it's the second or third question. "Are you sure you're okay?" Yeah, I'm fine. "Are you sure?" And then that's it. It's like you break. And I think sometimes you do need to say yes.
Yeah, sometimes you don't want to talk about it.
You don't want to talk about it, and you can hold it together. There have been times when I have held it together and then run away, and they've not had to know. But I think sometimes if you do break, that's totally okay.
I'm fully of this opinion as well, of when people say, "Are you okay?" and you go, "No, but I don't really want to talk about it." It's like my new boundary that I've set, where sometimes my husband will ask, "Don't lick that, please." Sorry.
The way that
that wasn't a good sentence to put together. No, stop it.
That wasn't. That was brilliant. And again, for anyone that can't see this is. I'm assuming it's the dog. I can't
see. The dog is licking a spoon that I'd left out, so it's my dirty habit. But for goodness' sake, stop it. What was I saying? Oh yeah, it's my new thing of like when my husband says like, "Are you okay?" And I'm clearly not, or maybe I just seem a bit off or something, but I'll go, "No, but I don't really fancy talking about it." Sometimes you just don't want to have to drag it up. Or maybe you've discussed it already with like 2 other people and you're like, "I just can't be bothered. It doesn't benefit me to bring up this negativity." And it's cool. It's okay to do that. It's like, trust the person to be like okay in themselves enough to know when they want to talk and when they don't, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. So, is there anything else you want to talk about today? Or mention?
I think the other thing is don't be afraid to ask for help. I think that's like my hardest thing that I probably still like struggle to do. Like even small things like when you go to the airport, don't be afraid to ask for the wheelchair and have somebody wheel you around right to the boarding the plane. It's actually really good and useful and helpful, and you might get weird looks. I got weird looks. Coming back from my honeymoon, I got comments of people like that were grumpy about the fact that I was young and being pushed around in a wheelchair, and they were having to walk the miles in the airport. And that's, it comes with a parcel, but don't be afraid of it. Like, it's what you need, and you know that you need it. So like, don't be afraid to ask for that support. Don't be afraid to ask for somebody to write your notes at university, and don't be afraid to like find out what support there is for disabled people and ask for it. Ask for those concession prices at the climbing wall. Like, go for whatever support you can get, because you deserve that. Like, it's there to benefit you.
Yeah.
So that's it.
Yeah, no, I agree. And you know what? I think it's one of those things. The journey ahead is going to be up and down. Even when you get to a better place or a good place, it's still going to be up and down. And I think just accepting that, like you were saying, that you're going to have flare-ups again. And it's, I know that especially with my knees, yes, I'm in a good place, but I'm aware not to push it too much and because life happens. And I think once you accept that, it's not just going to be smooth sailing, that's okay. Just kind of be ready in a way.
Yeah, I think it was really bizarre because when I got COVID, that pushed my health back a lot. I triggered a little flare up, but I lost a lot of like strength in climbing and stuff like that. So when we went back to the climbing wall, I was expecting this. I was back to, climbing V0s at the bouldering wall. My husband was also lost some strength and like wasn't doing as well climbing. He still at the moment isn't like at the point he was pre-COVID. He gets so angry about it. And he's ranting at me, by the way, which is like, it feels a bit like, you know, can you go have this conversation with somebody who hasn't been through this so many times, going, it's not fair that I lose everything. I worked so hard all of this time and it's just gone. And I have to do all of that work to get it back. And I'm like, oh my God, blame this to somebody else, please. But also, like, I found myself thinking, yeah, but, you know, because I'm used to that element of, when you come to terms with the fact that, especially with a condition like mine, it's a guarantee that I will have a flare up at some point again. Hopefully, you know, it won't be anywhere near in the future, but the nature of my condition is it flares. It's for as long as it is active, it is gonna try its luck occasionally. So I'm just aware that that's going to happen, and it's kind of like a sigh thing of like, okay, I have to do that again, but you just do. And when you like you say, when you accept that is your reality and that is the way things are, you can find the joy around it, like going for a wild swim rather than a hike, or, you know, doing some art indoors rather than outdoors, or, you know, doing things that you enjoy around that. You can, like you say, prepare, be ready for what you're going to do when that happens.
Yeah, you find other avenues. Yeah. Perfect. Well, it has been an absolute pleasure to talk to you today. I've also enjoyed having you. I'm really sorry about that.
I'm so good at finding the quietest room, and I just thought it would be okay because he just sits there. That's all he does.
You know what it does? It just shows that you can plan something and you can think it's all going to go to plan, but life happens. There we go. This is the example. Life happens.